بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلي وسلم على أشرف الأنبياء وإمام المرسلين نبينا وحبيبنا وقائدنا وقرة أعيننا محمد بن عبد الله عليه وعلى آله الطيبين وأصحابه غر الميامين أفضل الصلاة والتسليم. After praising Allah Ta'ala and sending salutations of our Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam, I proceed. You guys are tired, huh? You guys are tired. You guys want to sleep. Inshallah, I won't make this very long. Inshallah, it will only be about 3 hours.
Alhamdulillah.
Just 3 hours. Okay? Inshallah, you be patient for those 3 hours. The Adab al-Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, prophetic character. The character of the Prophet ﷺ was the best. But before we even get to the character of the Prophet ﷺ, it's important to understand what good character is. What's the definition of good character? What do you guys think? If you were asked, define good character, how would you define it? Sorry? You just define it. Imagine someone doesn't know the Prophet ﷺ and they want to know what good character is. How do you define it? Yes?
The rights of others upon you and fulfilling them.
Giving the rights of others. But giving rights to others doesn't necessarily mean that you have good character.
Trustworthy.
That's an example of good character.
Character that Allah pleased with.
Character that Allah is pleased with. Jameel.
Integrity.
Integrity. But
Sabr.
being patient, these are examples.
Definition, yeah, like
A definition, how do you define good character?
someone presents oneself with good. I was going to say like this.
Good, you can't define the word in the same word, good character.
A person around whom people feel comfortable and people really get attracted towards that person. That person has a good character.
Jameel. But that doesn't necessarily always mean that a person has good character. People could be attracted to people who may be evil people.
True. I mean, yeah, that's true. That's right.
Being a walking, talking Quran.
That's just one example. Being a walking, talking Quran. The Quran doesn't walk.
When you walk,
Embody the Quran.
when you talk, embody.
Jameel. But let's say someone doesn't know the Quran. You need to give him a definition of good character. You need to tell him, okay, this is what makes a person who has good character. Now,
like giving dawah without talking.
how do you do that?
Through your actions, through your
What actions? To your character, you can't use the same word, brother.
A person who's effective in different areas of life, and he plays so many roles, and he does them well. So, yeah.
Okay. Jameel. Now.
leaving a positive footprint.
Leaving a positive footprint. Athar. Okay. Jameel.
Humble.
Sorry?
Humble person.
Being humble.
Humble, yeah.
Having humility. Yes.
Loving others what you love for yourself.
Yes, salam. Yes, salam. We're getting somewhere. Do you want me to give you a definition? Do you want to? Are you sure? When they define good character, they say that these traits are what it means to have good character. The following. Number 1, that you have talaqat al-wajh, that you are one who has a smile on their face, that people, you're approachable, people love to come near you, etc. That's the first trait. Number 2, badl al-ma'ruf, giving that which is good to people or doing good things for people. That's the second trait. The first one was that you have an approachable appearance, you have a smile on your face and so on. Second is that you do good things for people. The third, it is kafful adha, not harming others, not causing harm to others. You refrain from harming others. That's the third, right? The fourth, they say, mudaratul ghadab, that you're one who's able to deal with anger, whether it's your own anger or other people's anger. That's number 4. Number 5, it is that you are one who, someone said it earlier on actually, I think, someone said it, that you are one, once you have all these traits, that you give كل ذي حق حقه, you give everyone their due rights. You give everyone their due rights. They say that this is what makes an individual that has good character. Does that make sense? So we said the first thing was what? That you have a smile on your face, that you approach your people like being around you. The Prophet ﷺ, he said that the best of people are those that people like to be around them, that they attract others. And the worst of people, he said, that they are those that people run away from due to fear of the harm that may come from that person. You see? Now, what was the second one? Doing good things for others within Ma'ruf. Doing good things for others. Right? And the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned numerous ahadith about the importance of being one who does and is beneficial to others. He said that ﷺ, أَحَبُّ النَّاسِ إِلَى اللَّهِ أَنْفَعُهُمْ لِلنَّاسِ. The most beloved people to Allah Azza wa Jalla are those who are the most beneficial to mankind. And the most beloved thing to Allah Azza wa Jalla is that happiness that you place in the heart of a believer, or that you feed him, or you clothe him, or you pay off his debt, and so on. And then he said, alayhi salatu wasalam, that if I was to walk on my brother in his time of need, it is better for me than performing i'tikaf in my masjid for a whole month. Let's put that into perspective. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam's mosque in Medina, Masjid Nabawi, one salah in it is equivalent to 1,000 prayers elsewhere. Right? Okay, you would perform 5 daily prayers, of course, and that's 5,000. You have the Sunnah Rawatib, that's 6,000. 6,000 plus 5,000, how much is that? 11,000. That's just your salahs, minimum, right? You're going to be doing i'tikaf, you're going to recite the Quran, at least you're going to do 1 khatm of the Quran. 1 khatm of the Quran is over 3 million rewards, right? Okay, you're going to do a lot of dhikr, you're going to do many righteous deeds. Perhaps by the end of, and being in Medina and the Prophet's masjid and so on, is a place where the reward is multiplied as well. So perhaps at the end of that month, you will leave with trillions of good deeds. The Prophet ﷺ saying that helping your brother in his time of need is more rewarding all of that. And it's better than that. Because there's a principle which is that the deeds that extend to others are more virtuous than the ones that only benefit you. Right? Okay, that was the third. Badal Ma'ruf. Was that the third? The second. What was the third one? Kaful adha, to not cause harm to others. Right? The Prophet ﷺ, he said that you refrain from causing harm to others. What is it? Sadaqatu minka an nafsik. It's a form of charity for yourself. By refraining from causing harm to others. It's a form of charity. If you can't benefit others, you can't be good to them, the least you can do is don't harm them.
Can you say the hadith again?
What was the hadith that I just said?
Is it a sadaqah to yourself?
نعم صدقة منك عن نفسك. صدقة منك عن نفسك. That was the third one, صح?
Great.
كف الأذى. The fourth, what was it? نعم مداراة الغضب. يعني being able to deal with your own anger and the anger of others. Being able to manage it. The Prophet ﷺ, a man came to him and he said to him, Ya Rasulullah, awsini, advise me. And the Prophet ﷺ, he would advise everyone based on what they needed. So what happened? He told this man, don't get angry. He said again, Ya Rasulullah, advise me. He said, don't get angry. He said, Ya Rasulullah, advise me. He said, don't get angry. Why? Because he needed that. Because anger is a huge, anger is a shahwa, it's a desire. Just like any other desires, anger is a desire. You need to learn to control that desire. And the Prophet ﷺ told us that what makes an individual strong, true strength, is being able to control your anger. He said, alayhi salatu wasalam, لَيْسَ الشَّدِيدُ بِالسُّرْعَةِ. The strong one is not the one who's able to wrestle others and defeat them. No, that's not what it means to be strong. He said, the strong one really is the one who's able, الَّذِي يَمْلِكُ نَفْسَهُ عِنْدَ الْغَضَبِ, the one who's able to control his anger. When he becomes angry, he doesn't destroy the whole building. He doesn't say everything. He can hold himself back, he can hold his tongue, etc. Because you know, when, imagine you had water and that water was boiling, right? If the water is boiling, when you look into it, can you see clearly through the water? Right? You can't see clearly through it, right? That's exactly how you are when you're angry. You can't see clearly. Things are not, you're not going to comprehend things properly. So you make the wrong decisions, right? So the Prophet ﷺ, he told us to refrain from that. And then the last one was what? To give everyone everything their due right. طيب. The ulama, they mentioned that there are 4 ahadith. These 4 ahadith, they summarize good character. You see, these 4 hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, they summarize good character. The first one, it is the hadith that our brother, he mentioned, لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه. That one of you truly does not believe until he loves for his brother what he loves for himself. Right? MashaAllah, the brothers at the back are very distracted. Huh? MashaAllah. He said that one of you truly does not believe, that Iman is not complete until you love for your brother what you love for yourself. That's the first. The second hadith, it is the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, where he says, من كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليقل خيرا أو ليصمت ومن كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليكرم جاره ومن كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليكرم ضيفه. Whoever believes in Allah on the last day, let him utter goodness or remain silent. The one who believes in Allah on the last day, let him honor his guest. The one who believes in Allah on the last day, let him honor his neighbors. That's the second hadith. Third hadith. It is من حسن إسلام المرء تركه ما لا يعنيه. From the perfection of one's Islam is to abandon that which does not concern him. That which does not concern you, don't get involved in it. If you get involved in things that do not concern you, you have bad character. That's what it means. You're always meddling in things that have nothing to do with you. You are constantly nosy and trying to find out about people's private lives and all that stuff. Things that you're not going to benefit anything from it in your dunya or your akhirah. And you're constantly getting involved in it. That's not from the traits of the Muslim. The Muslim does not do that. The Muslim, his affairs are too much for him to handle. He doesn't have time for other people's private affairs. Right? That's the third hadith, right?
Ustaz, can you repeat the third hadith?
The third hadith is from the perfection of one's Islam is to abandon that which does not concern him, to not get involved in things that do not concern him. That's the perfection of one's Islam, the Prophet ﷺ said. That's the third. The fourth, it is the hadith I just mentioned, which is don't get angry. Don't get angry. Right? These 4 hadith, the ulama, they say that these 4 hadith, they summarize for you what it means to have good character, if one truly understands it. Okay, now I want to ask you guys a question. Having good character, is it something that you're born with, or is it something that you learn? You pick it up? Huh? You learn it. You're not born with it? It cannot be born with good character. You can. Allah Azza can create you with certain traits that are good. And you also learn it, it's both. There was a tribe from the East Arabia. They were coming to Medina to embrace Islam. There was a man with them, his name was Ashaj. And when these people, they arrived in Medina, they were traveling for a long time, and they were excited to meet the Prophet ﷺ, so they all rushed to go meet the Prophet ﷺ, and they rushed to him. But Ashaj, he decided he's going to tie his camel. He went, he had a shower, he changed his clothes, he fragranced himself, and then he went to the Prophet ﷺ. And then when he went to the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ said to him, إِنَّ فِيكَ خَصْلَتَيْنِ يُحِبُّهُمُ اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ. He said, you have two traits that Allah and His Messenger ﷺ love. He said, what are they, Ya Rasulullah? He told him, Al-Hilm wal-Ana. Forbearance and not being hasty. So he asked the question, he said, Ya Rasulullah, these two traits, was I created with them, or is it something that I learned, I picked up? So the Prophet ﷺ said that Allah created you with these two traits. And then what did he say? He said, Alhamdulillah alladhi jabalani ala ma yuhib. He said, I praise Allah who created me with that which He loves. But another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ tells us, إِنَّمَا الْعِلْمُ بِالتَّعَلُّمْ وَإِنَّمَا الْحِلْمُ بِالتَّحَلُّمْ. That knowledge is learned. And forbearance is also something that you learn. You can teach yourself to be forbearing and to be patient and so on. These traits, you can pick them up and teach yourself to have them. Train yourself to have them. And that's what's required. Because the Prophet ﷺ, he told us that he was sent to perfect character. Meaning to help us make ourselves better people in every aspect. And Deen, Islam, every part of Deen is khuluq. Ibn al-Qayyim, he says, Ad-Deenu kulluhu khuluq. That the religion, all of it is good, is character. He said, فَمَنْ زَادَ عَلَيْكَ فِي الْخُلُقِ زَادَ عَلَيْكَ فِي الدِّينِ. Whoever has better character than you, they have more deen than you. Whoever has better character than you, they have more deen than you. Therefore, we should compete in having better character. Because akhlaq, a good character, it is an act of worship that we do for Allah. It's like all the other ibadat. Just like you perform salah, and you fast, and you give sadaqah, and so on. Having good character is an act of worship that you do for Allah Azza wa Jalla. Having that mindset, it changes the way you are, because now you're not being good to people and treating them well and giving everyone their due rights because you want something in return from them and so on. No, you're doing it because you want Allah's reward. So you're consistent in your character because you're always worshipping Allah. You never stop worshipping Allah. Even if the people are bad to you, you don't change your character because these people are treating you in a certain manner. No, your character should be consistent, no matter where you are, who you're with, etc. Because that's how the Prophet ﷺ was. The Prophet ﷺ, because certain people were behaving in a certain manner, it did not make him change the way he behaved with them. Even though sometimes they did the worst things to him. One example is that one day the Prophet ﷺ, he was walking in Medina with his wife Aisha radiallahu anha, and they walked past a group of Jews. And then these Jews, when they said to the Prophet ﷺ, they said, Assalamu alaikum. It sounds like Assalamu alaikum, right? But they said, Assalamu alaikum. Assam means death. They said, may death be upon you. Aisha, what happened? She heard this, she loses it. And then she says back to them, Assalamu alaikum wa la'natullah. She says, may death be upon you and the curse of Allah. Right? And the Prophet ﷺ said to her, Ya Aisha, it wouldn't be sufficient for you to say wa alaikum and upon you too. Right? And then he said to her, ما كان الرفق في شيء إلا زانه وما نزع عن شيء إلا شانه. That's gentleness. It's not placed in something except that it beautifies it. And it's not taken out of something except that it makes it ugly. Right? So he was teaching alayhi salatu salam to always take the best approach, even against your enemies. And you know what shows that you have great character? One of the greatest demonstrations of great character it is that when you have the ability and the authority to harm someone and you refrain from doing so, that shows that you have good character. You have authority over someone, you're more powerful than someone, but you treat this person in the best manner, that shows that you have good character. Because when someone's weak, they're always going to have good character to the one that is more powerful than them. That's normal. But when you're the powerful one and who has authority and so on, and you treat this person who is perhaps weaker than you and so on in the best manner, that shows great character, and that's how the Prophet ﷺ was. The Prophet ﷺ, he treated the Sahaba who were the weakest amongst the Sahaba as if they were the most important. There was a man, he was a Bedouin, he lived outside of Medina, he used to come to visit the Prophet ﷺ and bring gifts for him from the Badia, from the countryside. His name was Zahid. He came to the house of the Prophet ﷺ, he didn't find him there. So he went looking for the Prophet ﷺ in the market. And the Prophet ﷺ came home and he was told that Zahid came looking for Ya Rasulullah. So the Prophet ﷺ went looking for him. And then he found him in the market, so he went and hugged him from behind. And he started to shout, Man yashtari hadha al-abd, who's going to buy this slave? So then Zahid, he's like, who's this person trying to sell me? He tries to struggle, trying to get out of it. And then he recognizes the voice of the Prophet ﷺ, and he stops struggling. He lets him hug him. And then he said, إِذَنْ تَجِدُنِي كَاسِدًا يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. He said, you're going to find me with no value. No one's going to buy me, Ya Rasulullah. Look at me, I'm this Bedouin who, he didn't have the best appearance as well, etc. So the Prophet ﷺ said, no. He said, you are precious and valuable in the sight of Allah. And that's what matters. Amr ibn As, radiyallahu anhu, he became Muslim just before Fatih Makkah, before the conquest of Makkah. Amr ibn As, he was a man who had great expertise when it came to warfare, right? So the Prophet ﷺ, Amr just became Muslim, he's only been Muslim for a short period of time. The Prophet ﷺ appointed him to lead the army, to be the general, gave him a high position straight away. Who's in that army? Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, Ali. All these great Sahaba who have been Muslim way longer than him, who are closer to the Prophet ﷺ. So Amr, after he saw this, and the Prophet ﷺ preferred him over all these other companions, he came to a conclusion. He said, I must be the most beloved to the Prophet ﷺ. It has to be that. So what did he do? He actually went and asked the Prophet ﷺ. He said, Ya Rasulullah, I have an important question I need to ask you. He said, who's the most beloved person to you? The Prophet ﷺ, without hesitation, said, Aisha. He said, no, Ya Rasulullah, I mean from the men, yani. Your wife, of course, yani, you'll love her. From the men. He's waiting for Amr ibn As. He said, her father. He said, who's next? Umar. Who's next? Uthman. And the list kept going on until he said, Ya Rasulullah, stop. He was afraid that he was going to be the last. But just the fact that he asked that question, it shows how the Prophet ﷺ made him feel, that he made everyone feel as if they are the most important person to him. That's good character. Because everyone believes that they are significant and important. If you give everyone importance, that is how you capture hearts. Because the Sahaba actually, they narrate this. There was a man known as Jarir ibn Abdullah al-Bajali, radiyallahu anhu. Jarir, he became Muslim towards the end of the life of the Prophet ﷺ. He only spent with the Prophet ﷺ maximum 2 years, and then the Prophet ﷺ passed away. So now he's like one of the new companions, right? He became Muslim towards the end of the life of the Prophet ﷺ. You know what he says? He says, ما رآني رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إلا تبسم في وجهي وما حجبني قط. He says the Prophet ﷺ never saw me except that he smiled at me. Every time he saw me, he smiled at me. Look, why is he mentioning this? Because it stood out to him. It had an effect on him. Every time the Prophet ﷺ looks at you, he smiles at you. You're never going to forget that, right? But then he adds something else. He says, وَمَا حَجَبَنِي قَطْ. You know, a leader, normally they have people at their doors when they are in meetings, etc. And if someone comes and seeks permission, they may tell you, okay, we're busy, come at another time, etc. Jarir, he says that I never sought permission to enter upon the Prophet ﷺ, and I was never denied. I was never ever denied. What does that make you feel? It makes you feel that you're very important, that you've been given a special status, that every time you seek permission to enter, you're always granted access. That means you must be very important to the Prophet ﷺ. That's how he made him feel. He's one of the last companions, He's towards the end of the life of the Prophet ﷺ. And he mentions it because of how he made him feel. People remember how they felt when you did something. That's what they tend to remember. They remember how you made them feel. They may not also always remember exactly what happened, but they remember how they felt when this happened. And that's the Prophet ﷺ, he focused on. Right? The Prophet ﷺ, there was when he went to Mecca, look at this, and this is the point I was making earlier on. When he went to Mecca and he conquered Mecca, Quraysh now are terrified. They're thinking, هذا يوم الملحمة. They think this is the day that we're going to be butchered. It's going to kill us all. Because they know what they've done to the Prophet ﷺ. So they're terrified. So the Prophet ﷺ says to them, ماذا تظنون أني فاعل بكم? What do you think I'm going to do with you? So they're not going to say you're going to kill us. They said to him, أخ كريم ابن أخي كريم. They said, a noble brother, the son of a noble brother. يعني, inshallah, you're going to do something noble to us, inshallah. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said to them, it's exactly the way you thought. He said, اذهبوا فأنتم طلقاء لا تثريب عليكم اليوم يغفر الله لكم وهو أرحم الراحمين. He says, go, you're all free. Imagine these people, they exiled you. Everything you love, they take away from you. They did everything they can to harm you. They called you all sorts of names. They killed the closest people to you. They killed your uncle Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib. So much they did to you for years. And now when you have the ability to get revenge, after all those years, you say, go, you're all free. Only one who has true strength can do that. And that's one of the greatest things that I mentioned earlier on. That when you have the authority and the power, and you decide not to punish one, and to forgive them and pardon them, that shows great character. Al-'afwu 'inda al-maghfirah. Al-'afwu 'inda al-maghfirah. That you pardon when you're able to punish. And the Prophet ﷺ, he did that on numerous occasions. But he wasn't a pushover. He ﷺ, that which required punishment, he also did it. Because sometimes there's certain things that you can't let go of because it will cause more corruption and more evil and more harm. So you have to be wise in your approach. What is wisdom? Huh? What's wisdom? And what does wisdom mean? If you asked, what does it mean to be wise? How would you answer? Ahsant. To place everything in its right place. That's wisdom. Right? To do the right thing at the right time, in the right place, in the right method. That's wisdom. So the Prophet ﷺ was the most wise. He would have the most wise approach. That's why, if one wants to be wise, the more you learn about the life of the Prophet ﷺ and his seerah, and you learn about his sunnah ﷺ, the more wise you will be. Because you will learn the life of the most wise, and you would learn from that, inshaAllah ta'ala, and that will help you be more wise in your approach as well. Bi-idhnillah. Now we give examples of how the Prophet ﷺ was with others who were outside of his household. You know what truly shows your true character is when you're at home. At home is when you are your true self. Outside your home, you may put on an act, etc. But those who live with you, they know who you truly are. Your true colours are there. But how was the Prophet ﷺ at home? How did he behave with his family? The Prophet ﷺ, when he was at home, with his wives, with his children, he would give them time. Aisha radiallahu anha, she says that the Prophet ﷺ, one night he sat with me. And this is the stuff that men don't tend to like, but you're forced to do it. Right? That you come home from a long day of work, and then when you come home, your wife has so much to say, but you're just exhausted. But you have to listen. So the Prophet ﷺ, he comes home, and Aisha, she has a long story for him. She says, Ya Rasulullah, I went to a house, and all these women came together in the house. And all these women, they made an oath. They made a promise that they're all going to speak truthfully about their husbands. So it's women talk, yani. So some of them said good things about their husbands, some of them praised their husbands, some of them said bad things about their husband, etc. Until, the hadith is called the hadith Zara. Until we got to Zara. She starts to speak about Abu Zara. What did she say about him? She praises him, she's singing his praises. But then at the end, you know what she says? That he divorced her. So, and she's still saying good things about him, because he's such a good husband. So the Prophet ﷺ, he actually listened to what Aisha said, everything. And then at the end he said to her, I am to you, O Aisha, like Abu Zar'a was to Zar'a, except that I don't divorce. I won't divorce, inshallah. The Prophet ﷺ would give them time, he would listen to them. This jalsa is called jalsa samar. At night when you're sitting with your family and the stories and all this stuff. He ﷺ, he engaged in that. To the extent that one time, you know, the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, there was competition between them. A lot of them were jealous of each other. So, Aisha radiallahu anha, she knows she's the most beloved to the Prophet ﷺ, she knows that. Even though he doesn't show it, but they all know that, otherwise they all know. So Aisha, she has one big competition amongst all the other wives, Zainab radiallahu anha. And Zainab was, she used to try to do everything to compete with Aisha. So one time the Prophet ﷺ, when he was in the house of Aisha and he was heard at night, the other wives of the Prophet ﷺ, they summoned Fatima radiallahu anha, the daughter of the Prophet ﷺ. They said to her, Ya Fatima, listen, we have a huge, big issue we need to talk to you about. She said, what happened? SubhanAllah. Salamat. They said to her, listen, we need you to speak to your father. About what? What's happened? About Aisha. We're sick and tired and fed up with Aisha. You know, they don't have a single thing to say that the Prophet ﷺ done for Aisha, that's special, that he hasn't done for them. But they're just jealous. So it's not rational what they say. So Fatima listened to them and they just complained, every single one of them they stated their complaints. And then Fatima radiallahu anha, she went to the Prophet ﷺ in the house of Aisha. And she said, Ya Rasulullah. She said, your wives, they're complaining. About who? About Aisha. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he didn't even listen to what Fatima had to say. He said to her, Ya Fatima, is it not sufficient for you to love that which I love? And she said, of course, Ya Rasulullah. He said, I love Aisha, I love her. Fatima said, khalas, intaha, she left. So now when they realize that Fatima can't get to her father because they know how beloved she is to her father, what do? They decided they're going to send Zainab. Because Zainab, mashallah, is very eloquent. And she's the only other person that they know is a direct threat to Aisha. Bint Jahsh. So they sent Zainab radiallahu anha. And when they sent her, Zainab, she goes to the Prophet ﷺ in the presence of Aisha. And she says, Ya Rasulullah. Ya Rasulullah, we are all complaining to you about Bint Abi Quhafa. She doesn't even mention her name or even her father. She mentions her grandfather. She said, we're complaining to you about her. Ya Rasulullah, we feel like you're not being fair. We feel like, not we see. That's the word we use. And then she went on. And then Aisha radiallahu anha, she's sitting there, she's hearing all this about herself. She's getting angry. So the Prophet ﷺ, he says to Zainab, are you finished? She said, yes, I'm finished, Ya Rasulullah. And then Aisha said, Ya Rasulullah, can I respond? And the Prophet ﷺ said to her, go on. So then Aisha responded, and she completely destroyed Zainab's argument. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he laughed and he said, Innaha Aisha, see, this is why I love her. Why did he do that? He was trying to teach them a lesson. Because what they had done now is transgressed against Aisha for no reason. She hasn't done anything wrong. So he, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he laughed and he didn't make a huge deal about the situation. He allowed Aisha to defend herself, and then he said, Khalas, this is why I love her, now leave her alone. And the whole situation ended there. Nobody brought it up ever again. But one time, the Prophet ﷺ, one day, he was in the house of Aisha radiallahu anha, and Salama, she sent with her servant a bowl of food or dish food with her servant to the house of Aisha to give to the Prophet ﷺ. This created war. Salama now just declared war against Aisha. Why? Because it's making it seem like that she can't cook for the Prophet ﷺ, she can't take care of him and so on, right? So the servant comes into the house of Aisha, brings this dish, and then Aisha radiallahu anha, when she's given it, what does she do? She loses it, smashes it in front of the Prophet ﷺ. And what do you do in that situation? Imagine your wife just smashes the plates in front of you. Everything. No, nothing in between before it. Nothing leads up to it. Allah told from 0 to 100, smashes it. Most people might lose it. They might get angry, right? But the Prophet ﷺ, the hadith says that he actually went on the ground and he started to collect that which was broken, and then he smiled and he said, "Gharat ummukum," your mother became jealous. And he moved on as if nothing happened. Didn't discuss it, didn't shout at her, didn't have an argument. He carried on as if nothing happened. What did he show us, alayhi salatu salam? That in situations like this, you are not allowed to be emotional. As a husband, you're not allowed to be emotional. You have to be the one who controls his emotions. Because if one reacts to that with emotions, that could lead to your marriage breaking down. It can really lead to a huge fight, which started from something small like that. And that happens a lot. So the Prophet ﷺ demonstrated, La. Let her break everything in the house, don't react. And it's reported that one of the ulama of the past, he had a pact with his wife. He said that if I become angry, if I become obsessed and angry, then you remain silent. And if you become angry, I'll remain silent. So that it doesn't escalate. So they had that agreement. They said that for 40 years they were married, and they never ever had a huge fight. If he became angry, she'll become silent. If she became angry, he'll remain silent. So that's how they managed to protect themselves from huge conflicts. Because these things are going to happen, of course. So now the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, when they describe him, how they describe him? They described him as the most merciful, the most gentle, the kindest, the most thoughtful. Right? When Aisha radiallahu anha, in the hadith of Ifk, when she was slandered, she talks about the Prophet ﷺ when he used to come visit her, because she was sick at the beginning. She said that he came to visit her, and because the Prophet ﷺ knows about the slander that's going on, he came to see how she was. She told him how she was doing, and then he left and he didn't stay with her. She found it strange, because she said normally when I'm sick, he would take care of me, he would give me food, he would probably massage my body, etc. That's never happened, because she knew something was up straight away, because that was the norm. So the norm wasn't occurring. And he's the one who said, alayhi salatu wasalam, خَيْرُكُمْ خَيْرُكُمْ لِأَهْلِهِ وَأَنَا خَيْرُكُمْ لِأَهْلِهِ. The best of you are those who are the best to their families, and I'm the best amongst you to their family. Now, all of this that I'm mentioning, it has a huge link to Ramadan. And I'll tell you what that is. Ramadan is the time that we refine our character. Because the Prophet ﷺ, he told us that Madrasatu Siyam, the school of fasting, it should teach you to have better character. How? The Prophet ﷺ said, مَنْ لَمْ يَدَعْ قَوْلَ الزُّورِ وَالْعَمَلَ بِهِ وَالْجَهْلِ فَلَيْسَ لِلَّهِ حَاجَةٌ فِي أَنْ يَدَعَ طَعَامَهُ وَشَرَابَهُ. That whoever does not leave false testimony, yani false testimony, doing anything, zuhr is everything that Allah made impermissible, haram. You look at haram, or you say haram, or you backbite, or you gossip. All these things that Allah has made haram, and acting upon it, and acting upon ignorance, which is the opposite of good character, yani, then Allah Ta'ala is not in need of you giving you food and drink. Meaning that these things, engaging in them, they reduce the reward of your fast, and you could perhaps leave that day of fasting without any reward at all. So fasting is not only about starving yourself, it's also being conscious of what you say, what you do, etc. The Prophet ﷺ said, if anyone is, someone tries to provoke you, to harm you, etc., you respond and you say, Allahumma inni saim, I am fasting. That should stop you. So the fast is meant to serve as a shield that makes your character better. Right? So it's not only about that my relationship with the Quran becomes better, my relationship with the masjid becomes better, but I behave in any way that I want to. La. Iman is also demonstrated through your character. Taqwa is demonstrated through your character. Your character should become better. The one who is a person who is mustaqim, who is following the path of Allah Ta'ala and trying to observe it to the best of his ability, he should be the best when it comes to his promises. He should be the best at his appointments. He should be the most truthful. He should be trustworthy. He should be good in every aspect. But we find the opposite nowadays. We find that the one who tends to play in the front row, who's always in the masjid, he's the one who cheats the people. He's the one who gossips and lies about the people the most. He's the one who backbites the people the most, etc. This goes against the whole idea of being one who follows the way of Allah. You can't pick and choose. You can't say, oh, I'm going to be one who prays salah, etc. and all this stuff. But then when it comes to one dealing with people, that I view it as a separate matter. That's part of ibadah. It's not separate. Right? So I ask Allah Ta'ala to make us from those who have the best character. I ask Allah to forgive our sins. I ask Allah to make us from those who follow the example of the Prophet ﷺ. I ask Allah Ta'ala to resurrect us with the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, to unite us with them in Jannah al-Firdaus al-A'la. I ask Allah Azza wa Jal to grant us the ability to be successful in Ramadan. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to aid us and assist us in doing that which pleases Him. We ask Allah Ta'ala to guide us and to increase us in guidance and to guide others to us. And we ask Allah Ta'ala to keep us steadfast upon the guidance. And we ask Allah to grant us taqwa and to accept our deeds and to grant us sincerity in our statements and actions. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal, just like you united us all here this morning, that unites us all in Jannah al-Firdaus al-A'la without any previous punishment or any difficult account, with our parents and our loved ones, all those who have rights upon us. إنه بذلك القدر عليه. صلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين. See, it was only 3 hours.